There was a startled quiet in the courtroom. The black teen in front of the court was the center of attention. Her composed manner stood in sharp contrast to the derision she had just received. She had spent the last 20 minutes being scolded by Judge Patterson, who was notorious for his sarcastic remarks and patronizing demeanor, for having the audacity to represent oneself in such an important case. "Do you believe you can deceive this court?" His laughter reverberated around the room as he sneered. "A kid pretending to be an attorney? This is not a school play, young lady. This is a courtroom." Then she started talking. She started breaking out the prosecution's case in a clear and steady voice. The judge and the more experienced attorneys in the room were astounded by her incisive arguments and her familiarity with court precedents. As it became clear that this youth was no typical defendant, the audience gasped. Confusion and increasing uneasiness replaced the judge's arrogant demeanor. "I protest." Red in the face from frustration, one of the prosecutors cut in. "I have grounds to think so, Your Honor. This person is not who she says she is." The adolescent gave the prosecutor a small smile as she turned her keen look in her direction. "Your Honor, I can give you my credentials if needed, but be assured that everything I've said is compliant with the law. Should we go on?" Judge Patterson's expression had darkened to scarlet. "Who are you?" His voice breaking under the weight of his incredulity, he demanded. The girl produced a spotless document from her knapsack and gave it to the bailiff. The judge was given the paper. His hands shook as he read it. He opened and closed his mouth, but nothing came out. Breathless, the audience waited. Let's return to the starting point now. The narrative began with 17-year-old Maya Brooks and her grandmother, Clara, living in a peaceful Chicago neighborhood. Maya was not your typical adolescent. By the time she was 7 years old, she was reading law books for pleasure, and by the time she was 12, she was debating college students. She kept a low profile despite her intelligence, since she didn't want the attention that came with it. She was frequently reminded by her grandmother, a retired educator, of the need of humility and putting her talents to good use. Maya heard a talk at the local store one day while assisting her grandmother with groceries. Teresa, a local single mother, was crying as she told the cashier that she and her 2 small children were being evicted by their landlord. Teresa cried, "I have nowhere to go. He claims I broke the contract, even though I paid every amount on time. I didn't. I promise I didn't." Maya felt her heart sink. After the talk, she went over to Teresa and inquired about what had transpired. Teresa clarified that her landlord had accused her of having an excessive number of residents in the property. Teresa insisted, "It's just me and my babies. In order to increase the rent for someone else, he is lying." Maya's thoughts were racing. She questioned Teresa about whether she had saved documents of the lease and her payments. Teresa said she kept everything in a folder at home and nodded. Maya felt a glimmer of resolve. "Allow me to assist you," she responded forcefully. "You have a case, I believe." Teresa gave her a disbelieving glance. "But you're only a child," Maya said with a smile. "That's what I've heard previously. Believe me." Maya spent the following few days going through Teresa's papers. There were many contradictions in the landlord's statements. She made the decision to send the landlord a formal letter requesting that he stop the eviction and threatening to take legal action if he didn't cooperate. After the landlord disregarded her, she assisted Teresa in bringing a small claims lawsuit. The neighborhood rapidly became aware of it. The adolescent, who was constantly engrossed in reading, was advocating for justice. Local reporters took notice of the case, and Maya's involvement made headlines in every small-town news outlet. However, not everybody was impressed. Her credentials were questioned by some, while others made fun of the notion of a teenager handling such a serious issue. Teresa grew more nervous as the court date drew near. "But what if we lose? I don't have enough money to hire an attorney." Although she understood in her heart that the risks were great, Maya soothed her. Teresa wasn't the only one involved. It was about confronting injustice and demonstrating that skill was not based on age or skin color. The courtroom was crowded on the day of the hearing. Reporters, spectators, and even a few attorneys had gathered to observe the kid lawyer in work. Wearing a simple blue blazer and skirt, Maya had a serene confidence that belied her age. Judge Patterson, however, cut her off just as she was about to speak. "Furthermore, who are you meant to be?" With a tone full of condescension, he questioned. "Your Honor, I'm representing the plaintiff," Maya said coolly. The judge shook his head and laughed. "You must be kidding. Is this a joke?" Whispers and muffled laughter permeated the room. Maya remained steadfast, her face unchanged. Judge Patterson persisted in mocking her, casting doubt on her authority and claiming that today's youth were unaware of the gravity of the law. Maya waited for her turn to speak while she bore it all in silence. When the time came, she made a clear and concise presentation of her case, exposing the landlord's falsehoods and referencing prior court decisions. As she talked, the audience became silent, her words demanding respect and attention. But it was when she disclosed who she really was that everyone fell silent. Maya Brooks is a confirmed legal genius who, up until now, has kept a secret that she passed the bar exam at the age of 16. The sound of Judge Patterson's gavel hitting the bench sent the courtroom into a frenzy. Maya was about to strike the last nail in the prosecution's weak arguments when the judge leaned forward, his face whitened. He stumbled, obviously requiring some time to take in what had just happened. "This court is adjourned for a 10-minute recess," he said. As he withdrew to his chambers, Maya's gaze followed him, and a little grin appeared on her face. This was just the start. As the recess started, the courtroom was alive with conversation. The adolescent lawyer who had just astounded the judge and prosecution equally was the subject of whispers among the leaned-in spectators. Her posture astounded some. Others expressed skepticism, arguing that this had to be a complex fraud. Maya kept her hands firmly gripped together while she sat at the plaintiff's table. Her heart pounded despite her calm demeanor. Although it was a brave step, she had taken risks by disclosing her qualifications. There was no going back now. Teresa spoke softly above the din as she bent in her direction. "Are you certain we'll prevail, Maya? They're behaving as though you're a fraud." Maya faced her, speaking steadily. "Their fear is the reason behind their behavior. Teresa, the truth is on our side. Believe me." The bailiff announced the judge's return before Teresa could reply. When Judge Patterson returned with an inscrutable mask over his face, the room fell silent. He cleared his throat and sat down. With a firmer tone than previously, he stated, "This court will now resume." He turned to face Maya, but the haughtiness of the moment was gone. "The court recognizes your credentials, Ms. Brooks. You can go ahead, but I suggest you take it slow. You continue to represent your client in a highly important case." With cautious steps, Maya stood and made her way to the front of the courtroom. She ignored it, concentrating only on the work at hand, even though she could feel the weight of the stairs on her back. "Your Honor," she said, "I want to present more proof that challenges the defense's assertions even more." She went up to the bench and gave the judge a pile of papers, including copies of emails that Teresa and the landlord exchanged, all of which refuted his allegations of lease violations. To make sure nothing was overlooked, Maya had underlined important words in vivid yellow. Judge Patterson silently went over the papers, his face becoming more grave by the moment. He looked up at last and turned to the lawyer for the landlord. "Mr. Cole," the judge replied sharply, "your client's evidence is directly contradicted by these emails. Have you got a reason for this?" The middle-aged man with graying hair who was the landlord's lawyer hesitated. "These emails might have been fake, Your Honor. It would take time for us to confirm their legitimacy." Maya did not recoil. "I expected that argument, Your Honor," she added, taking out a second piece of paper. "This is the chain of custody for these emails, which includes a trained digital forensics expert verifying the metadata." Murmurs broke out in the courtroom once more. Judge Patterson slammed his gavel down. "Put in order." "Order," I said. With unflinching confidence, Maya went back to her seat. The judge looked back at the lawyer for the landlord. "Mr. Cole, I will be forced to accept these communications as legitimate unless you can offer hard proof to the contrary." The defense lawyer was obviously taken aback and stammered over his remarks. "We need more time to review, Your Honor." I rejected. The judge cut in, his voice cold. "Too much time has already been spent on this issue." "Oh, Ms. Brooks, go on." Maya stood up once more, her voice steady as she described the sequence of events, connecting the landlord's conduct to blatant infractions of housing regulations. She cited precedent after precedent, all of which supported Teresa's argument. At one point, the landlord himself, a sour-faced muscular man, leaned over and spoke angrily to his lawyer. Maya saw, but she didn't let anything divert her attention. On the contrary, she continued, her arguments becoming stronger by the minute. Then, however, An unforeseen event occurred. Maya started to summarize her last arguments when the landlord suddenly got to his feet, his face flushed with rage. "She's lying," he said, gesturing at Maya. "The entire situation is a setup. A child like her could not possibly understand all of this legal jargon." Chaos broke out in the courtroom once more. Judge Patterson's voice boomed over the din as he repeatedly pounded his gavel. "Court order. I'll hold you in contempt if you don't sit down, Mr. Reynolds." The landlord sat grudgingly, anger pounding in his chest. Despite the outburst, Maya drew a deep breath and remained composed. "Your Honor," she responded coolly, "I invite Mr. Reynolds to present any evidence that he may have to back up his charges. If not, I ask that the court concentrate on the facts." With a harsh frown, the judge nodded. "Until you are asked to speak, Mr. Reynolds, you will not talk. You can go on, Ms. Brooks." Maya concluded her presentation with closing remarks that were as authoritative and precise as if she were twice her age. She felt a sense of relief when she eventually sat down. However, she was aware that the fight was far from finished. The next witness the defense lawyer summoned was an apartment complex maintenance worker who said he saw several persons coming and going from Teresa's apartment. As the man spoke, Maya paid close attention and took notes. She walked calmly and deliberately toward the witness stand when it was her turn to cross-examine. "Mr. Davis," she started, "you stated in your testimony that you witnessed several individuals coming and going from Ms. Carter's residence. Could you tell me how many persons were involved and when this happened?" The man paused. "It was a few months back, and there were maybe 4 or 5 of them." Maya gave a nod. "A few months prior. Can you recall the precise dates?" "No, not precisely," he said. "At the time, did you notify anyone about this?" "Well, no," the man moved uneasily in his chair. "Back then, it didn't seem like a huge deal." A small smile curved Maya's lips. "To be clear, you are unable to back up your allegation with precise dates or proof. Is that right?" Despite his grimace, the man nodded. "Yes, I suppose so." Maya moved away from the stand and said, "Thank you, Mr. Davis." She looked at Teresa as she went back to her seat, and she received a timid but appreciative smile. Compared to the previous drama, the remainder of the day's hearings were unremarkable, but as the court adjourned for the day, tension was still high. Reporters surrounded Maya and Teresa outside, asking questions and taking pictures. Maya led Teresa through the crowd, protecting her as best she could. At home, Maya finally succumbed to tiredness and fell onto the couch. After setting a cup of tea in front of her, Clara took a seat. Her grandmother said to her, "You were amazing today." "I'm really pleased with you." Maya forced a weary smile. "Grandma, thank you, but it's not quite done yet. It's going to be even harder tomorrow." Squeezing her hand, Clara extended her arm. "Maya, you've got this. Just keep in mind your motivation." Maya nodded, determination flaring in her eyes. For individuals such as Teresa. For everyone who has heard the phrase, "You're not good enough." Maya showed up early in the courts the following morning, prepared to take on whatever was ahead. However, she was met with a sight she hadn't expected as she entered the doors. 2 policemen are talking to the landlord while standing close to the entryway. When one of the officers saw Maya, he approached her with a somber attitude. "Oh," he said, "Ms. Brooks. We must speak." Maya's mind raced as she froze for a second. She looked for any clue as to the nature of this altercation in the officer's face. She had been a few feet behind her, but Teresa caught up and felt the tension instantly. "Officer, is there a problem?" Maya asked, maintaining a calm tone. The officer looked across the lobby at the landlord, who was grinning smugly. "Mr. Reynolds has provided us with a report," the officer stated. "In this scenario, he is accusing you of fabricating proof." Teresa's hand shot to her mouth as she gasped. Maya's heart raced, but she made herself stay composed. She said, "That's a serious accusation. What proof does he have for that?" The officer rocked uneasily. "That's not what we're here for. We are merely exercising due diligence. To answer some questions, you will need to come down to the station." The landlord's arrogant expression widened. Maya's face did not flinch as she looked into his eyes. "I get it," she told the officer. "Before I leave, though, I would like to talk to my client and legal counsel." After hesitating, the officer nodded. "All right. Avoid taking too long." Maya whispered softly as she turned to Teresa. This is an act of terror. He is attempting to frighten us as he is aware that his case is unraveling. However, what if you are arrested? With a hint of panic in her voice, Teresa muttered. What if they did? They won't, Maya firmly stated. They have no evidence that I have done anything wrong. Remain composed and refrain from speaking to the landlord or his lawyer. With reluctance, Teresa nodded. Then Maya contacted her grandmother and moved aside. Clara picked up the phone on the first ring. Is everything all right, Maya? Grandma, I need you to get in touch with Mr. Harris, Maya remarked, referring to a retired lawyer family acquaintance. I was falsely accused by the landlord, and now the cops want to question me? Clara's tone became stern. Be resilient, my love. I will contact him immediately. Don't be intimidated by them. Maya assured, I won't, and hung up. The police was waiting close by when she turned back to him. I want to clarify that I haven't done anything criminal, but I'm ready, she stated. I'm being intimidated by this. The cop gave a nod, but said nothing. Maya didn't let the landlord enjoy watching her stumble, so she held her head high as they made their way to the station. Maya was led to a little interview room at the police station. Other than 2 chairs and a metal table, it was empty. A recording recorder was set on the table across from her by one of the officers who had transported her. You're not under arrest, Ms. Brooks, the officer said, but we need to ask you some questions regarding the evidence you presented in court. According to Mr. Reynolds, it was made up. With a serene look, Maya folded her hands on the table. The proof I provided is genuine. I can provide evidence of its legitimacy, such as a chain of custody report from a qualified specialist in digital forensics. The cop scowled a little. Are those documents in your possession? Maya answered, they're in my case file, which is back in the courtroom. Feel free to review them. After hesitating, the officer reclined in his chair. If Mr. Reynolds' accusations were untrue, why would he make them? Because, Maya stated plainly, he is desperate. He is aware that his case is unraveling. This is his attempt to postpone the procedures and damage my reputation. After examining her for a while, the officer got to his feet. Hold on. As the officer walked out of the room, Maya let out a slow breath. Despite her calm demeanor, a glimmer of uncertainty was unavoidable. What if the case was ruined by this? What happens if they fall for the landlord's falsehoods? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Mr. Harris, the retired lawyer and family friend Clara had gotten in touch with, came back after the officer. He was an elderly man with a confident gait and keen eyes. Before speaking to the police, he nodded reassuringly to Maya. I am here as the attorney for Ms. Brooks, Mr. Harris stated. What precisely is the rationale for this inquiry? Mr. Harris listened to the officer's explanation of the landlord's charges, but his countenance remained fixed. After the officer was done, Mr. Harris leaned forward and spoke in a firm but calm tone. He called this a baseless charge. Let Mr. Reynolds provide any supporting documentation for these claims if he has any. If not, you are unjustly holding my client. The officer rocked uneasily. We're not going to hold her. Then she can leave, Mr. Harris said. This is the end of the talk unless you intend to arrest her. After hesitating, the officer nodded. She can leave now. However, we will be investigating this further. Maya got to her feet, her self-assurance restored. I'll be glad to assist. As far as the law permits, she responded. Mr. Harris touched Maya's shoulder as they walked out of the station. You did a good job of handling yourself, he replied. But exercise caution. This landlord is being dishonest. Maya gave a nod. That's what I anticipated. I appreciate you coming. Any time, said Mr. Harris. Go win that lawsuit now. Teresa ran to Maya when she got back to the courts, her expression showing relief. Are you all right? What took place? I was released, Maya remarked. They had nothing on which to cling. Teresa let out a breath of relief, but her eyes still held strain. Now what should we do? We follow the plan, Maya stated resolutely. This is only one more challenge. We'll overcome it. The mood in the courtroom was notably different when the hearing resumed that afternoon. The landlord sat smugly, obviously anticipating that Maya would have been shaken by the police incident. It seemed as though nothing had happened though, as she got up to continue her argument. Maya systematically dismantled the landlord's last defenses, calling witnesses and presenting proof of his past tenant exploitation. By the end of the day, the landlord's confidence had started to erode as the tension in the room increased with every minute that went by. However, just as Maya thought they were making progress, a new elopement threw everything into disarray. The landlord's lawyer stood and spoke to the judge as the court was about to adjourn. "We have fresh evidence, Your Honor, that we think will turn the tide of this case. To introduce it tomorrow, we ask for an urgent motion." The judge scowled. "What sort of proof?" The lawyer paused, obviously attempting to make it sound more dramatic than it actually was. "Financial documents that imply Ms. Carter has been hiding details about her earnings." Murmurs broke out in the courtroom. Maya stared at Teresa, who appeared completely perplexed, and her heart fell. For silence, the judge rapped his gavel. Judge Patterson stated that the motion would be reviewed tomorrow. The day's court session has been adjourned. Maya felt a sinking sensation in her chest as she packed away her files. Everything could go awry if the landlord's team had falsified proof. She looked at Teresa, who was shaking and pale. "I don't get it," Teresa said. "Which financial documents?" "I have nothing to conceal." Maya touched her shoulder in a comforting manner. "Do not be concerned. We will work things out." However, Maya couldn't help but feel that the fight was going to get harder as they left the courthouse. The stakes felt bigger than ever this time. Maya spent the night in her room going over all of the case's documents, emails, and notes. She needed to predict what the landlord's team would do next, even though she knew they were using every tactic in the book. It was illogical to bring up financial records. Teresa had been open and honest about her earnings, and Maya had even looked over her own bank records. As Maya scribbled up potential arguments and methods, the screen of her laptop shone dimly in the darkened room. Clara, her grandma, peered in with a gentle look of worry. "You need to rest, my love," Clara whispered softly. "If you are exhausted, you will not be able to win this war." "I need to find out what they're planning," Maya said without looking up. "I know, Grandma." "We can't be caught off guard tomorrow," Clara said as she entered and touched Maya's shoulder. "Tonight, you've done everything you can. Have faith in yourself and that the truth will be revealed." With a sigh, Maya grudgingly nodded. She closed her laptop and remarked, "You're right. I'm going to sleep." But her thoughts would not stop as she lay in bed. What sort of proof might they possess? And how far would they go to undermine Teresa's reputation? The courtroom was once more crowded the following morning. The landlord's last-minute motion had gone viral, and everyone was curious to see what would happen next. Teresa and Maya sat at the plaintiff's table, both attempting to look composed in spite of the tense situation. Judge Patterson came in, looking as serious as ever. He declared that the court was currently in session. "You can move forward with your motion, Mr. Cole." Mr. Cole, the landlord's lawyer, got up and walked over to the bench with a heavy folder. "These financial documents, Your Honor, imply that Ms. Carter has been getting money from unidentified sources. Given her ability to pay rent and her claims of financial difficulty, we think this material is pertinent to the case." The bailiff took the folder from him and gave it to the judge. Judge Patterson's brow furrowed as he turned the pages. The judge looked up and said, "Ms. Brooks, have you gotten a chance to look at this proof?" Maya got up. "No, Your Honor. I'm viewing it for the first time. I would ask for more time to examine these records and confirm their legitimacy." Mr. Cole protested right away. "The evidence is simple, Your Honor, and ought to be admitted right away. My customer would be unfairly disadvantaged by any delay." Maya took a step forward. "This evidence was offered at the last minute without any previous notification, Your Honor. Given the gravity of these accusations, we should be given time to conduct a full investigation." After giving this some thought, the judge nodded. "It's true, Ms. Brooks. The deadline for the plaintiff to examine this evidence is tomorrow am. The day's court session has been adjourned." Following the conclusion of the hearing, Teresa and Maya quickly left the courtroom and located a peaceful area to review the paperwork. As Maya turned the pages, her heart fell. Bank statements and payment logs were among the documents that appeared to indicate Teresa had been receiving substantial quantities of money from an unidentified source. Teresa's voice trembled as she said, "I don't understand. These had never been seen by me before. I don't own them." Maya's analytical mind raced through the documents. Although these appear official, Something doesn't feel right. I will investigate further. After taking out her laptop, she began comparing the transaction details and account numbers. She searched diligently for an hour before discovering the first clue. Maya pointed at the TV and said, "Look at this. These payments are coming from an account that is owned by Harmony Solutions. Do you know what they are?" Teresa gave a headshake. "No. What are they doing?" Maya typed frantically and said, "I'm not sure yet. However, I will find out." Harmony Solutions was a shell corporation with no actual business operations, according to her search. It had a PO listed as its address box in a far-off state, and its website had only one page with ambiguous consulting service descriptions. Maya sought evidence to support her intuitive feeling that this company was a front. "This might be our smoking gun, Teresa," Maya added. "We can demonstrate that these documents were fake if we can connect Harmony Solutions to Mr. Reynolds. But how can we accomplish that?" With a hint of urgency in her voice, Teresa asked. Maya reclined, her thoughts whirling. "We'll require assistance. I'll give someone I trust a call." That night, Maya got together with Aaron, a tech-savvy neighbor who had previously assisted her with research. Aaron enjoyed a good challenge and was a cybersecurity major in college. "Financial records that were fabricated?" Aaron raised an eyebrow in response. "That's dubious, but I'll track out any digital evidence." Maya gave him the papers and told him what she had found so far. Aaron started to delve into Harmony Solutions, his fingers gliding over his keyboard. An hour later, he leaned back and grinned triumphantly. "I understand. The holding company that Harmony Solutions is registered under is owned by, wait for it, Mr. Reynolds, your landlord." Maya's mouth clenched. "He is responsible for this. In order to frame Teresa, he made up records." "It appears so," Aaron answered. "And I can confirm it with the digital breadcrumbs. A template program was used to create these transactions." "Amateur maneuver." For the first time in the day, Maya grinned. "You save lives, Aaron." "Just doing my part," he shrugged. "I'll provide you all you require. But exercise caution. This kind of guy doesn't play fair." Maya entered the courtroom the following morning feeling more determined than ever. After spending the night compiling Aaron's research into an extensive presentation, she was prepared to expose the landlord's most recent plot. Reiterating his assertion that Teresa had been concealing her income, Mr. Cole boldly provided the court with the financial records when the session resumed. The judge looked at Maya. "Are you prepared to answer, Ms. Brooks?" Maya got up and spoke steadily. "Indeed, Your Honor. In order to discredit my client, I would like to provide proof that these financial documents are false and were created by Mr. Reynolds." As Maya moved to the front and started her presentation, the room erupted in gasps. She described the relationship between Mr. Reynolds and Harmony Solutions, describing how the business had been utilized to fabricate transactions. Copies of Aaron's findings, which included screenshots, metadata, and a detailed description of the counterfeit process, were given to her. When she was done, the landlord's arrogant look was gone. He spoke angrily at his lawyer, who appeared agitated and pale. Before speaking to the landlord directly, Judge Patterson took a few long moments to consider the facts. "Do you have an explanation for this, Mr. Reynolds?" The landlord's face flushed as he stumbled. "Indeed, I did nothing. It's a setup." The judge's face grew stern. "The evidence contradicts this. These acts, which seem to be an attempt to influence this court, gravely disturb me. I'll be sending this case for additional research." With her heart racing, Maya went back to her chair. Despite winning this round, she was aware that the fight was far from over. The judge looked at Teresa as she adjourned the day, and Teresa's eyes were filled with tears of appreciation. However, as they started to gather their belongings, Mr. Cole stood up and made a statement that made Maya shudder. "Your Honor, my client plans to file a countersuit for defamation in light of these claims. We'll start filing the documents right away." The courtroom was rocked by the statement. A retaliation? Maya's thoughts were racing. She was aware that this was just another tactic used by the landlord to wear Teresa down and make her submit, but it made an already difficult battle even more difficult. Judge Patterson gave Mr. Cole a doubtful look. "After being linked to the falsification of evidence, you want to file a countersuit for defamation. For this court to even consider such a claim, there must be strong evidence." Mr. Cole smirked as he fixed his tie. "We will prove that, Your Honor. We feel that my client's reputation has been unjustly harmed by this case, and the charges against him are unfounded." The judge let out a long, obviously angry sigh. "You can submit your motion. However, please be aware that pointless litigation will not be accepted by this court. Proceed at your own peril." The hearing was adjourned for the day when the gavel fell. Maya sat there with her mind racing as the courtroom cleared out. Teresa, who was clearly scared, sat next to her. "Maya," Teresa muttered. "What does this signify? Is he capable of doing this?" Maya turned to face her, resolve shining in her eyes. "Teresa, he's bluffing. He is attempting to intimidate us into giving in since he is aware that his case is weak. However, we're not leaving." Teresa, Maya's grandma Clara, Erin, and the rest of her team met at her house that night to discuss emergency plans. As Maya outlined her strategy, the scent of the tea that Clara had prepared for everyone permeated the tiny living room. Maya started, "We can't ignore this countersuit, but it's a distraction. It can cloud the situation and make it more difficult for the judge to perceive the truth if we allow it to acquire traction." Erin bent over. "I have been researching Reynolds' financial documents. Maya, there are secrets in the man's closet. It appears that he has been utilizing other shell companies to evade taxes and transfer funds, based on the transactions I discovered." Clara's gaze expanded. "That's serious. Would it support your argument?" Maya stated that it might, but we must proceed with caution. We'll need strong evidence and a plan to connect it to the case if we bring it up. Teresa appeared overburdened. "Maya, this is so much. None of this is what I ever wanted. All I wanted was to keep our house and safeguard my children." Maya touched her shoulder in a comforting manner. "Teresa, I understand. And we're going to do precisely that. We're not giving up, no matter how shady they get." Maya entered the courtroom the following day, ready for another conflict. As promised, Mr. Cole had brought the countersuit, alleging that Teresa's charges had seriously damaged Mr. Reynolds' reputation and caused him great emotional anguish. With skepticism, Judge Patterson examined the motion. "Your motion, Mr. Cole, makes audacious assertions. Do you have proof to back up these claims?" Mr. Cole gave a nod. "Indeed, Your Honor. We plan to call witnesses who can attest to the harm these unfounded charges have done to my client." Maya got up. "We think this countersuit is an attempt to divert attention from the true problem, Your Honor. Misconduct by Mr. Reynolds. Before this motion moves forward, we would like the chance to depose Mr. Reynolds and his witnesses." The judge gave this some thought. "Excellent. Before we proceed, deposits will be scheduled." The court has been adjourned. A week later, Maya found herself confronting Mr. Reynolds and his lawyer in a tiny conference room. From the beginning, the deposition was tense. Maya persisted despite Mr. Cole's attempts to sidestep inquiries and divert the discussion from potentially damaging subjects. "Mr. Reynolds," she said sharply, "could you elaborate on the reason Harmony Solutions payments are linked to your personal bank account?" Mr. Reynolds moved apprehensively. "You have nothing to do with that." Maya pressed that it's directly related to this case. "In order to frame my client, Harmony Solutions falsified financial data. Are you denying that you are associated with this business?" Reynolds gave her a fierce look. "I'm not required to respond to it." Maya spoke calmly but firmly as she leaned forward. "If you want this court to think your countersuit is good, you do." Reynolds' lawyer cut him off in a flash. Disapproval. "The countersuit has nothing to do with these inquiries." Unflinching, Maya turned to face him. "Considering the accusations made against my client, they are completely pertinent. Let's talk about the harm caused by Mr. Reynolds' unfounded allegations if you want to address defamation." One could feel the tension in the room. Reynolds' lawyer changed strategies and brought up the countersuit again. However, their case was already beginning to reveal cracks. Maya's team discovered more incriminating evidence against Mr. Reynolds as the days went by. According to Aaron's inquiry, he controlled several shell companies besides Harmony Solutions. A number of others were connected to scams that preyed on low-income renters. Equipped with this knowledge, Maya readied herself to deliver her conclusions to the court. However, the pressure started to wear thin as the hearing drew near. Maya and Teresa were harassed by reporters, who twisted the narrative into dramatic headlines. Discussions about the case were rife on social media. Additionally, Maya was the object of both praise and condemnation. Clara sat next to her one evening while she worked late in her grandmother's living room. Clara whispered, "Maya, you're carrying a lot on your shoulders." Maya moaned with tiredness, "You don't have to do this alone. Grandma, all I want to do is what's proper." However, there are moments when it seems like the entire universe is against us. Clara gave a soft smile. No matter how bleak things appear, the truth always finds a way to come through. Simply continue, one step at a time. The mood was electrifying as the court met again. Maya meticulously presented her findings, linking a pattern of fraud and abuse to Mr. Reynolds' network of shell corporations. She described how he had intimidated tenants and silenced critics with these techniques. Judge Patterson listened carefully, his face darkening with each new information. There was silence in the courtroom after Maya's conclusion. The judge turned to the landlord's lawyer and said, "Mr. Cole, regarding these accusations, do you have any answers?" Cole stumbled, obviously taken by surprise. "We think these allegations have nothing to do with the countersuit, Your Honor." He was interrupted by the judge. "Unconnected? They immediately address the credibility and behavior pattern of your client. Until these claims are thoroughly examined, this court will not move further with the countersuit." A wave of relief passed through Maya, but it was fleeting. A disturbance broke out in the rear of the courtroom as the judge was about to adjourn. Two suit-clad men with badges flashed in. One of them said, "We're federal investigators, Your Honor. Mr. Reynolds has been the subject of our inquiry, and we have an arrest warrant for him." As the officers walked up to the landlord, who became pale, the courtroom erupted in gasps. As he was handcuffed, he yelled, "This is a mistake. This is not possible." Maya's heart was racing as she watched. Despite the fact that this was a triumph, she felt that the battle was far from done. When the federal authorities carried Mr. Reynolds away in handcuffs, the courtroom was in disarray. His protests reverberated throughout the room, but they were soon overpowered by the murmuring of the throng. Maya's thoughts was spinning as she sat motionless in her chair. Although she hadn't expected the landlord to be arrested, she was aware that this could significantly change the case. Judge Patterson demanded order with a thud of his gavel. Before ending the hearing, he said that the court would meet again tomorrow to decide how to proceed. Teresa's voice wavered as she turned to Maya. "Is this the end of it? Will he end up behind bars?" Maya gave a headshake. Although it's a significant development, the lawsuit is not necessarily over. We must wait and watch how things develops. Later that night, Maya sat in the kitchen with Aaron and Clara, going over what had happened during the day. Articles about Reynolds' arrest were going viral on the internet, where Aaron had been keeping up with the story. Aaron replied, looking through his laptop, "Looks like the feds have been investigating him for years." He mentioned everything from wire fraud to tax fraud to tenant abuse. This man has been scheming all throughout the state. With a somber expression, Clara reclined in her chair. He was frantic to quiet Teresa, and it makes sense. The investigators' odds were likely tilted when this case was made public. With a troubled brow, Maya nodded. "For tomorrow, we have to get ready." Although Reynolds may not be involved at this time, his lawyer will probably make an effort to advance the countersuit. Aaron scowled. "They're still trying to fight without Reynolds?" "Perhaps," Maya remarked, "but the judge is aware that the facts favor us. All we need to do is stay one step ahead of them." The courtroom was more subdued than normal the following morning. Mr. Reynolds was conspicuously absent, but his lawyer, Mr. Cole, was there, looking more gaunt than ever. Teresa and Maya sat down, waiting to see what would happen next. Judge Patterson came in and spoke to the group. "I want to discuss the current developments before we move forward. The integrity of this lawsuit and the countersuit are seriously called into question by Mr. Reynolds' arrest. This court must still consider all available information before making a ruling, though." Mr. Cole stood and spoke hesitantly. "Your Honor, based on the strength of our claims, I think the countersuit should go forward even though my client is not available." Maya stood up. "The countersuit is without merit, Your Honor. The defense's credibility is undermined by the falsified evidence, Mr. Reynolds' arrest, and his documented history of dishonesty." The judge gave a slow nod. "Ms. Brooks presents a compelling case. But before I make a decision, I'll give the defense a chance to make its case. You can go ahead, Mr. Cole." Mr. Cole called a tenant from another of Mr. Reynolds' properties as his first witness. The man insisted that the charges against him were misinterpretations and asserted that Reynolds had always been fair and polite. Maya paid close attention and made notes. She walked confidently to the stand when it was her turn to be cross-examined. "Mr. Davis," she started. "According to your testimony, Mr. Reynolds was a just landlord. Could you verify whether you and he have ever had any disagreements?" The man paused. "No, not in my opinion. Have you ever experienced seen rent increases or been threatened with eviction?" "Well, no," he said. "Do you know that Mr. Reynolds owns a number of properties under various company names?" Maya pushed. The eyewitness shifted uneasily. "Yes. I've heard rumors." Maya gave a small smile. "It's true that rumors can reveal information. No more inquiries, Your Honor." The defense's case deteriorated over the course of the day. None were able to deny the growing evidence against Reynolds, and their witnesses praised him only in a general way. It was evident by the afternoon that Mr. Cole was running out of options. Maya stood with the quiet assurance that had come to define her when it came time for her last argument. "Your Honor," she said, "my client is not the only one involved in this matter. It's about confronting people who misuse their position of authority to take advantage of others. There is no question about Mr. Reynolds' actions given his arrest and the facts we have provided. This countersuit has no merit and is a last-ditch effort to shift the blame." Teresa, seated tensely at the plaintiff's table, caught her attention. "Ms. Carter has done nothing wrong and is a diligent mother. This court has the authority to provide her with the justice she deserves." Maya glanced back at Mr. Cole as she sat down again. He slouched his shoulders and averted his eyes from hers. Before speaking to the court, the judge paused to go over his notes. "It is evident from the evidence that the countersuit is without merit. The original case will continue once this court dismisses the countersuit with prejudice." Teresa and Maya felt a sense of relief. The road to triumph became more obvious than ever, and the countersuit was formally dead. However, a bailiff came up to Maya with a sealed envelope as the courtroom was starting to empty. He answered, "This was just delivered for you." Maya cautiously opened it and read the contents, her heart racing. A subpoena was issued. The hearing was scheduled for the next day after Reynolds' legal team submitted a motion to introduce new evidence. Her moment of relaxation was fleeting. The battle has just begun. As Maya read the subpoena, her heart fell. Fresh proof. Her head was already buzzing with questions as she said, "What was there left for Reynolds' team to present? And with Reynolds incarcerated, how could they have done it?" Teresa, who had been enjoying the judge's decision to dismiss the countersuit, saw a change in Maya's expression. "What is it?" Nervously, she asked. Maya gave the paper to her. "A motion to introduce new evidence is being filed. Tomorrow, we have a hearing." Teresa's face went white. "Fresh proof. Can they throw anything else at us?" Maya touched her shoulder in a comforting manner. "We'll be prepared for whatever it is. This is merely another last-ditch effort to delay." When Maya got home that night, she called Aaron right away. He was as perplexed as she was when she narrated the circumstances. "Fresh proof." Aaron, typing frantically on his laptop, remarked, "Considering the mess they're in, that's a bold move. They must be bluffing or betting on something significant." "We can't take chances anyway," Maya said. "Please look into Reynolds' legal team in more detail. Check to see whether they have been collaborating with someone new, particularly after his imprisonment." Aaron said, "I'm on it. I'll update you on my findings." Despite her feelings of uncertainty, Maya held her head high as she entered the courtroom the following morning. Teresa was sitting next to her, holding her hands firmly in her lap. Reporters and onlookers were excited to see what this latest twist would bring, and the room was alive with suspense. Judge Patterson came in with an inscrutable look. "We are presently in session of this court. You've asked to present fresh evidence, Mr. Cole. Please elaborate on its significance." Mr. Cole held a manila folder as he stood. Maya was concerned that he appeared to have regained his confidence. "Your Honor, this information speaks to the plaintiff's credibility and plainly refutes her claims of financial difficulty." The bailiff took the folder from him and gave it to the judge. With a bland attitude, Patterson opened it and looked through the contents. "Ms. Brooks," replied the judge, "have you gotten a chance to look over this evidence?" "No," Maya said, "Your Honor. We're witnessing it for the first time." Very well, replied the judge. Mr. Cole will make his case, and then you will have an opportunity to answer. As Mr. Cole spoke to the court, Maya braced herself. These are signed affidavits, Your Honor, from several witnesses who allege to have witnessed Ms. Carter doing undeclared business activities, such as running a cash-only daycare out of her apartment. Throughout the courtroom, there were gasps. Teresa glanced to Maya and shook her head as her face got white. That's untrue, she muttered. I have no idea what they are discussing. Maya nodded, already preparing a response to the assertion. She returned the whisper, don't worry. We'll take care of this. Mr. Cole went on to exhibit the photographs and documents that allegedly showed parents dropping off their kids at Teresa's residence. This income, according to the defense, cast doubt on her veracity and disproved her claims of financial difficulties. Maya addressed the bench with her typical composure when it came time for her cross-examination. Could I review these affidavits, Your Honor? Copies of the paperwork were given to her by the bailiff after the judge nodded. Maya swiftly glanced over them, noticing differences in the witnesses' ambiguous phrasing and signatures. Mr. Cole, she started. Could you verify if these witnesses have been deposed and who they are? Mr. Cole paused. Their affidavits are notarized and signed, but they have not yet been deposed. Maya gave a small smile. Credibility is not the same as notarized. We are unable to confirm the veracity of these statements without depositions. She looked across at the judge. Before this testimony is permitted, Your Honor, I ask that these witnesses be made accessible for depositions. The magistrate gave a nod. That is a fair request. Make arrangements for the deposition of your witnesses before the end of the week, Mr. Cole. This evidence won't be taken into account till then. The burden of the fresh accusations hung over Maya and Teresa as they exited the courthouse following the hearing. Teresa eventually lost it as they made their way to the car. What if people think this, Maya? Tears were flowing down her cheeks as she said, These are people I don't even know. How can I tell if they're telling lies? Maya gave her a firm hug. Teresa, we'll prove it. I swear. Just another of their games, this one. It's going to be exposed. Aaron called that night with an update. I discovered something intriguing, Maya. Those affidavits were signed by one of the witnesses? She is associated with a business that is related to Reynolds Properties. Maya squinted her eyes. Do you imply that she works for him? Aaron explained that it wasn't straightforward. However, she has experience working for a property management company that is in charge of some of his buildings. It's sufficient to cast doubt on her objectivity. Maya nodded as a strategy began to take shape. That's just what we require. Can you get more information? Aaron said, I'm already on it. Furthermore, 2 additional witnesses have ties to Harmony Solutions. Right now, I'm sending you everything. For the first time in the day, Maya grinned. You save lives, Aaron. Maya got her deposition plan ready the following morning. She methodically undermined the credibility of the witnesses when they were summoned. She questioned their reasons for coming out and presented Aaron's findings, highlighting their connections to Reynolds. Under duress, a visibly anxious witness acknowledged that she had received payment to sign the affidavit. Another said she was informed she was signing a petition on tenant rights, but she had no awareness of the accusations. It became evident by the conclusion of the depositions that the new evidence was just another fake. Judge Patterson, who was clearly dissatisfied with the defense's strategies, heard Maya's conclusions. This court has had enough of these unfounded distractions, Mr. Cole, the judge added sharply. You've provided inadmissible evidence, and I'm thinking about punishing your client for trying to deceive this court. Teresa and Maya looked at one another with relief, but the triumph was bittersweet. It was evident that Reynolds' crew wasn't finished battling because of the extent they were prepared to go. Maya stepped out into the cool air as the hearing came to an end, her determination unwavering. However, a man in a dark suit emerged from the darkness as she got closer to her car. Ms. Brooks, he said in a cold tone. I would advise you to take a step back. You have no idea who you are interacting with. Maya's voice remained steady as she gazed at him, her heart pounding. You'll have to do better if it poses a threat. Because I am not leaving. The man in the dark suit narrowed his eyes and smiled icily at Maya. With a tone full of derision, he responded, Suit yourself. Don't claim I didn't warn you, though. He turned and left without saying another word, vanishing into the packed parking lot. Teresa rushed over to Maya, who had just left the courthouse. "Who was that?" Her voice was shaking as she asked. "I'm not sure," Maya said, looking around the room. "Reynolds' crew is obviously not only acting dishonestly though. They're becoming worse." Teresa had a pallid face. "This is becoming risky, Maya. Perhaps we ought to." "No," Maya forcefully interrupted. "They want precisely that. They will win if we give up now. And they will continue to harm others in this way." Teresa hesitantly nodded, but her eyes were still filled with terror. Maya sat at her workstation that night, mentally reliving the experience. The man's voice, his assured gait, the ambiguous yet direct menace. Everything seemed premeditated. In the hopes that Aaron could provide some clarification, she gave him a call. "Hello, Maya," Aaron said. "What is going on?" She described the man in detail as she related the parking lot event. "I have no idea who he is, but he obviously has ties to Reynolds or his group. Could you investigate any recent hires they may have made?" Aaron let out a sigh. "They may have hired advisors or private investigations. I'll search and see what I can uncover." Maya said, "Thank you, Aaron. Please let me know if anything seems strange." "I suspect that this is not the end." Maya was determined to keep control of the matter, so she got to the courthouse early the following morning. Judge Patterson surprised her by calling her into chambers prior to the start of the session. "Ms. Brooks," he said with an extremely solemn gaze, "the lawyer for Mr. Reynolds has written to me to ask that the hearings be postponed indefinitely, pointing to his client's legal issues and incapacity to take part." Maya's forehead wrinkled. "This is just another stalling strategy, Your Honor. The defense has attempted to sabotage this case on several occasions. A risky precedent would be created if they were given an extended delay." The judge gave a contemplative nod. "Although I acknowledge that the request is dubious, the court must strike a balance between efficiency and fairness. Have you suggested a course of action for us to follow?" Maya inhaled deeply. "I ask that the case proceed without any more delays, Your Honor. Based on the previously presented facts, Mr. Reynolds' legal team may represent him in the event that he is not available." Leaning back in his chair, Judge Patterson thought about what she had said. "Excellent. I'll schedule a final hearing and reject the defense's plea for an indefinite delay. Next week, be ready to make closing arguments." When the hearing resumed, the announcement sent shivers through the courtroom. Mr. Cole hurried to protest, obviously unprepared for this turn of events, but the judge refused to back down. Judge Patterson said the matter had gone on long enough. After closing arguments from both sides next week, this court will render a decision. Teresa went to Maya as the court adjourned, her voice a mixture of relief and nervousness. "So, is this it? It's nearly finished." Maya gave a nod. "Nearly. However, we must ensure that our final argument is sound. This is our opportunity to close the transaction." Aaron called that night with an update. "You won't believe this, Maya," he continued. He spoke with a sense of urgency. "That guy in the parking lot was identified to me. Lucas Harper is a private detective who has a reputation for doing dubious work, but in what way?" Maya's stomach constricted as she asked. "Harassment. Fear. Planting proof. Name it. He has been connected to a number of well-known situations in which the opposition abruptly withdrew when he became involved." Maya let out a loud sigh. "They are attempting to intimidate us into giving up." "Exactly," Aaron answered. "Here's the worst part though. Harper is connected to yet another of Reynolds' front businesses. He is being paid directly by them." Maya squinted her eyes. "We need to demonstrate that type of pattern to the court. Could you email me all of Harper's information?" Aaron answered, "It's already on its way." "Just watch out, Maya. This individual doesn't follow the rules." Maya included Aaron's results to her case file the following day. She was aware that it might be dangerous to disclose this information in court. Harper's presence demonstrated Reynolds' lack of credibility and tactics, even though it had nothing to do with the case. Teresa called while she was at work. She spoke in a panic. "Something's not right, Maya. Today, a man stopped by my apartment and inquired about you." "What was it he asked?" Maya's pulse accelerated as she asked. "For example, how we met, why I trusted you, and whether I believed you could handle the matter. He claimed to be a reporter, but there was something off about him." Maya's jaw tightened. Harper is that person. They are now attempting to uncover information on me. Tell me if he returns, and don't respond to any more of his inquiries." "All right," Teresa answered, trembling. "But this is becoming more terrifying every day, Maya. What if they caused harm?" "They won't," Maya firmly stated. "We will not be intimidated by them." The next week, as Maya and Mr. Cole got ready to make their closing arguments, the courtroom was crowded. Reporters and onlookers were anxious to see how the case would end, and the tension in the air was evident. First to speak, Mr. Cole characterized Reynolds as a misunderstood landlord who had been unfairly singled out. His argument lacked substance and was full of evasive claims and sentimental pleas. When it was Maya's turn, she spoke clearly and steadily while standing tall. "One thing has always been at the center of this case, Your Honor. Fairness. A pattern of dishonesty, manipulation, and exploitation by Mr. Reynolds and his staff has been revealed by the evidence that has been presented during this trial. Their strategies, which range from falsified financial documents to witness intimidation, reveal a great deal about their credibility, or lack thereof." She took a moment to process what she had said. Teresa Carter is a dedicated mother who has fought tirelessly for her right to peace. This court has the chance to provide her with the justice she deserves today. Maya went back to her seat and sat next to Teresa, her heart racing. The courtroom gradually emptied as the judge declared that he would render a decision in 3 days. A shadowy figure emerged as Teresa and Maya made their way to the parking lot. Harper was the one. "You truly have no idea when to give up, do you?" With a tone full of threat, he spoke. "Kid, you're playing a risky game." In spite of the horror that swept through her, Maya halted and stood up. "The game you're playing is the only risky one here. You've already lost, too." Harper grinned. "We'll investigate that." A black SUV arrived and headlights rushed over the parking lot before Maya could react. Maya and Teresa stood in the quiet, cold night as Harper turned and vanished into the car. 3 days later, as Judge Patterson got ready to make his decision, the courtroom was once more crowded. Maya had her hands firmly gripped together as she sat at the plaintiff's table. Holding her breath, Teresa sat next to her. The judge cleared his throat. "This court rules in favor of Teresa Carter, the plaintiff, after considering all of the evidence and testimony that was provided in this case." The judge held up his hand for silence as the crowd burst into cheers and ovation. "Additionally, this court will send Mr. Reynolds and his legal team for an inquiry into potential misconduct, including tampering with evidence and perjury." Teresa hugged Maya while tears ran down her cheeks. "We succeeded," she muttered. "You succeeded." Maya grinned, a mixture of pride and relief. But she was confident of one thing as she glanced across the room and saw Mr. Cole packing his briefcase quickly. Her quest for justice had only just begun with this triumph. Although the court victory was significant, Maya was aware that the battle was far from over. There was a noticeable sense of relief as Teresa embraced her, yet a persistent uneasiness pulled at the corners of Maya's mind. Although the judge's decision and Reynolds' arrest were triumphs, they were only one aspect of the conflict. The larger structure that permitted landlords like as Reynolds to take advantage of renters was still very much in place. Clara, Maya's grandma, was waiting for her when she got home that evening. Clara pulled Maya into an embrace and said, "You were amazing, Maya. I'm really pleased with you." Maya grinned as the warmth of her grandmother's hug temporarily relieved her tension. "I guess this is just the beginning, but thank you, Grandma." Like Teresa, a great number of people lack the means to defend themselves. Clara nodded, her expression contemplative. "Maya, you have a present. It might be time to consider how you might use it to assist additional individuals." A local journalist called Maya the following morning. "I'm Tyler Jackson from the Tribune," said the person on the other line, Maya Brooks. "It would be a pleasure to feature you. Emphasize the Reynolds case you worked on and its implications for tenant rights." Maya paused. She didn't particularly love the attention and wasn't accustomed to it. However, she understood that telling the story would encourage others to advocate for themselves. "All right," she answered warily. "However, only if the case and its effects on tenants like Teresa remain the main focus." "Yes," Tyler said. "We should arrange an interview." When the piece went public later that week, it was more than Maya had anticipated. "Teen attorney takes down corrupt landlord. Sparks hope for tenants everywhere" was the headline. It described the trial, Reynolds' strategies, and Maya's relentless pursuit of justice. The reaction was tremendous. People from all around the nation sent Maya thousands of emails and notes, many of which included personal accounts of housing injustice. One email in particular caught our attention. "Greetings, Ms. Brooks. I am Laura Gonzalez. For more than a year, my landlord and I have been engaged in a similar conflict. I was inspired to continue by your narrative. Would you be ready to provide me some advice regarding my case? I truly need your assistance, yet I cannot afford a lawyer." Maya's thoughts were racing as she gazed at the email. She was only one person, but she wanted to help. How could she balance her education and her life with taking on more cases? Later that nig. "HT," she said, "Grandma. People are requesting my assistance. I don't know how, but I want to do more." Clara sat next to her, her face composed and smart. "Maya, you don't have to do it by yourself. There are those who are as passionate as you are. Perhaps a larger project is in order." For the next few weeks, Maya pondered how she could increase her influence. She made contact with neighborhood attorneys, civic organizers, and housing rights-focused nonprofits. Gradually, a strategy started to emerge. A community-based project that would offer free legal assistance to renters who were being exploited and faced eviction. The Justice Collective was the name she gave it. Aaron jumped on board right away and offered to take care of the technical aspects. With excitement, he replied, "We'll set up a website, social media, everything." This has the potential to explode out. After everything she had been through, Teresa was anxious to give back and volunteered as well. "Maya," she said, "you saved me. Helping you save others is the least I can do." The consequences of Reynolds' arrest persisted in the meantime. According to news sources, he was also charged with racketeering and tax evasion. Tenants who had been illegally evicted started to speak up, and the authorities seized some of his homes. However, not everyone was pleased with Maya's increasing power. Her phone buzzed with an unidentified number one evening when she was working late at the new Justice Collective office, a tiny donated space in a community center. She paused before responding. The voice on the other end was low and threatening. "Ms. Brooks. You don't realize how deep this goes, but you feel like you've won. Take a step back while you can." Maya gripped the phone more tightly. "Who is this?" The caller gave a gloomy laugh. "Let's assume that I have the ability to make issues go away. Think of this as your final caution." The line died. Maya's heart was racing as she gazed at her phone. She informed Aaron of the threat over the phone right away. Aaron remarked, "That's crazy. We must notify the police about this." Maya paused. "And what do you say?" "I was ordered to cease helping people by an unidentified caller. They won't take any action without evidence." "You shouldn't take this lightly," Aaron insisted. "They're afraid of what you're creating, and you're getting under their skin." Maya inhaled deeply as her determination solidified. "I must therefore be doing something correctly." More stories surfaced as the Justice Collective gained popularity. Tenants who felt helpless, landlords who manipulated leases, and families who had been evicted from their homes. As volunteers stepped up to support the cause, the movement grew. However, the threats persisted. After discovering a menacing message pinned to her door, Maya began to notice odd cars parked close to her home. "Give up while you can." She saw Lucas Harper waiting outside the office one evening as she was leaving. His smirk was as venomous as ever as he leaned idly against a lamppost. As she came closer, he remarked, "You've made quite a name for yourself. However, you're prodding objects that don't enjoy being prodded." Refusing to display fear, Maya squared her shoulders. Harper laughed and said, "I'm not scared of you. Perhaps you ought to be. We don't lose, people like me." "I don't either." Maya brushed past him and shot back. Her resolve was only strengthened by the threats. By the end of the year, the Justice Collective had exposed a number of dishonest landlords and assisted scores of families in avoiding eviction. As word of Maya's narrative spread, more people were motivated to resist injustice. Maya, however, knew the battle was far from done. She discovered more corruption the further she delved. And her detractors rose along with the movement. She wasn't giving up though. Not right now. Never. The Justice Collective grew in a way never seen before. Maya and her team turned a modest project into a significant force in less than a year, exposing structural corruption in housing regulations and bringing landlords to justice. However, the threats against Maya increased with each triumph. She was reminded that she was engaged in a battle that extended well beyond her primary case by anonymous letters, late-night phone calls, and the constant presence of Lucas Harper's shadow. After concluding a session at a nearby community center one evening, Maya got an urgent call from Aaron. Aaron remarked in a strained voice, "Maya, we've got a problem. I've been keeping an eye on some odd activities connected to Reynolds' former network. Tomorrow, a huge real estate transaction will take place. It involves a group of investors with a dubious background as well as Harmony Solutions, one of his shell businesses." Maya scowled. "What is the matter?" "They intend to purchase a block of affordable apartments, remove the residents, and convert it into opulent condominiums. The gentrification plan is textbook, and they're taking a cue from Reynolds. Dozens of households will be displaced if this happens." Maya felt a knot in her stomach. "Is there enough evidence to prevent it?" "Not yet," Aaron said. "However, I discovered the location of the signing. We may be able to halt it if we can interrupt the meeting and reveal their plans." Maya, Aaron, and Teresa showed up at the downtown office building where the conference was to be held the following morning. They were prepared to face the investors and tell them the truth, armed with the documents Aaron had found. Maya noticed Lucas Harper resting against a wall close to the elevator as they entered the building. When he spotted her, he grinned. "You're tenacious." He answered, "I'll give you that. This time, however, you're completely out of your league." Maya took a step forward. Her tone was icy. "Perhaps. Or perhaps the end is near for you and your companions." Harper laughed. "I wish you luck. You'll require it." Ignoring him, Maya made her way to the conference room where the agreement was to be signed. She could see, through the glass walls, a group of suit-clad guys sitting around a table with papers laid out in front of them. She inhaled deeply before pushing the door open and entering. The investors turned to stare at her, and the room fell silent. "Are we able to assist you?" In an irritated tone, one of them inquired. Maya raised a file folder. "I am here to prevent you from ruining the lives of others." The men looked at each other with amusement. However, Maya persisted. After setting copies of Aaron's results on the table, she started outlining how the transaction depended on dishonest tactics. Their smirks vanished as she talked. "This is not only an unethical trade. It's against the law," Maya said. "And if you proceed, we'll make sure that everyone is aware of what you're doing." There was a lot of tension in the room. "We need to talk about this in private," mumbled one of the investors, who was obviously shaken. Another leaned forward, less shook. "This is not your place, child. Before we call security, get out." Maya refused to back down. "If you wish, you can contact security, but the proof is already en route to the Attorney General's office and the media. The meeting has ended." Nobody moved for a second. Then an older investor got up with a sigh. "She is correct. This is not a risk we can take. We're leaving." As they poured out of the room, the others did the same, some complaining, some glaring at Maya. In the doorway, Lucas Harper emerged, observing with a mix of admiration and disgust. He remarked, "You really don't quit." With a firm voice, Maya turned to face him. "Not when lives are on the line." For the first time, Harper's grin wavered. Before leaving, he gave her a slight nod that was almost courteous. Maya's reputation as a courageous champion of justice was cemented when the tale of her confrontation at the investor conference soon went viral. Support for the Justice Collective was overwhelming, with volunteers and donations pouring in. Tenants started banding together to defend their rights, and the housing complex Maya had spared came to represent optimism. However, Maya was aware that the battle was far from done. She discovered that the system had serious flaws, and that there were more lurking in the shadows for each investment scheme she exposed or landlord like Reynolds. Maya thought back on the voyage thus far one evening while she was sitting with Teresa and Clara. She stated, "It feels like we're just scratching the surface. So much more has to be done." Clara grinned, pride shining in her eyes. "Maya, you've already changed things, and you're encouraging others to do the same. That's the start of true transformation." Teresa gave a nod. "You restored my life. You're engaged in more than just casework. People are getting hope from you." Maya grinned as a feeling of direction washed over her. "Then, I suppose, we continue." Maya Brooks would subsequently become a well-known lawyer and activist who spearheaded a national campaign for housing reform and tenant rights. The Justice Collective grew into a strong organization that rewrote laws to protect the weak and assisted thousands of families. And Maya never faltered, even though the threats never completely vanished. She had discovered that the pursuit of justice was always worthwhile, even though it was never simple. Because the world got a bit brighter for each individual who found their voice, like Teresa Carter. Maya's narrative turned into a lighthouse, a reminder that one person could make a difference against insurmountable odds, and that the pursuit of justice was always worthwhile.